Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's live stream. I'm Kim Coffey, your host from IFMA. While we wait for everyone to join us in the live stream, please drop us a line. Be sure to tell us where you're from and say hello. Now, before we get started, let's take a moment to go over the format. Our panelists have prepared a discussion around the future of the sustainable workplace with opportunities for you to participate along the way through polls. This will be a very interactive session. In just a moment, you'll see a QR code to scan, or you can access through your browser at www.menti.com and enter the code shown at the top of the slide deck. So today's discussion is divided into three main topic areas. We'll be taking your questions throughout to address during the hour, so be sure to leave your questions in the chat box, including where you're tuning in from. Don't be shy, ask away. Now, before I turn it over to Peter Ankerstern, IFMA's chair of the Global Board of Directors and CSO for Planon, we need a couple of things from you. First, please like the video you're watching now. This helps us reach more FMs like you who can gain insight from this kind of great content. And again, be sure to drop your questions in the chat box as well as tell us where you're tuning in from. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Peter to begin today's discussion. Enjoy.
Thank you, Kim, and also a warm welcome to this session, the IFMA Wednesday webinars. It's really a pleasure to be part of this. We have a really exciting topic today, the future of the sustainable workplaces, and especially how technology plays a role in the remixed layout for turbocharged collaboration. We have an excellent panel with us today, but just to go through sort of the layout of the next 60 minutes, what we'll do is we'll have our two presenters on the panel. They will come with a point of view on three topics. And those topics are experiences with rolling out smart building for space planning strategies. It's then sustainability and the organizational footprint, the right sizing in the hybrid workplace environments. And then the third topic is IoT for managing the agile workplace, lessons learned from global deployments. So these are the three topics, and as Kim also mentioned, please ask questions along. I will pick them up and ask them to the panel, to our experts here. Just ask away. We'll try to prioritize them to see if it fit under each of the three topics that we're working with, and if it doesn't, then we'll probably ask anyway. So it'll be good to have some questions, live questions from the audience. So with that, and also please also remember to scan the QR code or go into menti.com for the polls. The polls are also something that we value a lot in these sessions, and we will also have our two experts commenting on the results shown in the polls. So that's important also. So with that, I'd like to introduce our expert panel. Two great friends of mine, somebody I work with on a daily basis. First up, we have Darlene Pope, and Darlene is really a thought leader within smart buildings. She had her own company, Core Advisors, that was sold to JLL, and she then joined JLL Smart Buildings Technologies and which is now JLL Technologies, and then she joined WeWork before joining Planon. So welcome, Darlene. I know you probably have a few more details around your own profile and perhaps also a short introduction to Planon as well.
Sure. Great. Thank you. Thanks, Peter. Thrilled to be here today. I'm actually logged in from a hotel in Seattle, Washington. I live in Northern Virginia and I work out of our office in Boston. So, one of the things we're talking about today is that, work is something that you do, not somewhere that you go. So I think that's going to be key in our theme for the discussion today. So again, Darlene Pope, I'm president of North America for Planon, and I'm also a member of our Global Strategy and Growth Board. I've spent about the last 30 years doing education and consulting around the use of technology for real estate. And that has evolved from telecom to in-building wireless to smart buildings to digital workplace, and now full end-to-end integration of all technologies within our buildings. So thrilled to be here today and talk to you a little bit about my experiences and my insights on these topics. So let me tell you a little bit about Planon as we get kicked off. So Planon is a global leader in IWMS, which is Integrated Workplace Management Solutions. We have been ranked consistently in the top right quadrant for Verdantix and Gartner and IDC as a global leader in this industry. The company is about 40 years old. We've been providing software for facility management and real estate management for almost 40 years. Very large global footprint, very large global customers. And you can see that we provide services and solutions all over the world. So I'm thrilled to have joined Planon. I've been with Planon for about a year, a little over a year. And really, you know, my role at Planon is to help pull together digital workplace and smart building solutions and help our clients really recognize the value of that full end-to-end solution. So thank you, Peter. I'm looking forward to the conversation today.
Thank you, Darlene. And next up at our expert panel, we have John C. Wang. John is the co-founder and CEO of IAdea. He's definitely also a thought leader within the industry. I've had the pleasure of meeting John at a couple of IFMA events lately in Austin, Texas at Facility Fusion. And John is also involved with the DSMA, Digital Solution Multimedia Asia, and also with AVIXA, and also the Institute for Information Technology. So you certainly also have a lot of experience under your belt, John. So, but let me hand it over to you in order to also share a little more details about yourself and also about IAdea.
Thank you, Peter, for the kind words, and it's really a great pleasure to be here, sharing the stage with Peter and Darlene, you know, two of the people that I admire the most in the facility industry. So my name is John Wang. I am the co-founder of CEO of IAdea. I started the company about 20 years ago, and I think our sole mission is to use digital technology to drive changes for businesses. And you know, myself, today I'm located in Taipei, but I see a few faces that we met a few weeks ago in Austin. So I do travel around the world. So time zone is not a problem for me. Even right now, it's only about 10 p.m., which is my prime time in the evening. So I want to tell you a little bit about my company, IAdea. So we are a company about 20 years old, slightly younger than Planon. And we started, as I said earlier, using digital technology to help businesses transform their physical spaces. So the first of our products are digital signage. So for example, menu boards that went into restaurants and took out the printed cardboards and plastic sheets. Really, one of the goals there is to drive sustainability, finding a more efficient way to deliver information to the point of interest. So we've done that for retail, and now we're finding a lot of application of digital screens in the workplace, which I think we'll touch on a little bit today. I think the goal is really, you know, through technology, which is my passion for my life, most of my life. You know, we really want to do something for the world. Honestly, for facility industry, I am a newbie, so I'm here to learn as much as all you are. So thank you, Peter. I really look forward to the session today.
Thank you, John, and to all of you following this live session. Thanks for all your comments. It's great to see we literally have people from all over the world. I see a lot of people coming from North America, a lot from Europe, from India, from Taiwan, from other parts of Asia, and even Latin America here also. So this is truly an international webinar, and especially audience we have to this. So this is great to see. Well, let's start by the first section. And as I mentioned in my introduction, what we'll do is we'll get some point of view and some a knowledge upload from both Darlene and from John via a couple of slides, and then we'll go in and have a discussion about this particular topic. Again, to all of you following on virtually here, please ask questions. We now open the chat. It certainly works because there's continuously coming in more places from around the world. So we can definitely see it's working. But please ask questions. Feel free to ask any question that you feel is relevant to this particular topic. So our first topic is really experiences. What are your experiences in rolling out space planning strategies for the new world that we're seeing, both during the last 4 or 5 years, but definitely also in this new world that we're seeing post COVID. So Darlene, why don't we start with you?
Great. Yeah, and I think that the entire world is facing the exact same question. How do we get people back to work? I don't think that the workplace is going to look the same ever again after this COVID pandemic has hit. So in terms of space planning, what I want to touch on today is how technology can enable a healthy, sustainable workplace experience. So when we're looking at what is the experience that employees are expecting when they come back to the workplace, and how can you create that experience for them so that you're enticing people to come back to the workplace? So when you're looking at space planning and how are we going to plan our offices going forward, I think the most important metric that we need to solve for is occupancy. You have to really have a firm understanding of how your space is being used, who's using your space, where they are at any given time in that space. And that's going to drive most of the metrics that we're looking at in terms of environmental metrics around energy management, CO2 levels, indoor air quality. It's going to drive that experience for the occupants, and it's also going to contribute to your ESG metrics. So the reason I broke it out into these 3 different sections is really to talk about how technology can support your environmental goals, your experience goals, and also those ESG metrics. So let's go back again to that occupancy detection. Occupancy in the building literally drives everything. When you think about it, office buildings don't really use energy. People do. So you have to run the building based on the needs of the people. People are the ones that require conditioning of that air. People are the ones that require indoor air quality. People need lights. People need electricity. So it's really, really critical to understand what your occupancy levels are on a regular basis, on a real-time basis, so that you can actually run the facilities based on real-time occupancy, not based on a time clock. One of the things that we saw during the COVID pandemic all over the world is that buildings were still running based on a time clock. Vacant buildings were still running as if they were vacant. Tremendous amount of energy was wasted because we didn't have the ability to detect whether or not there were people in the space and to run the building based on that information. So I think what's really critical going forward, and what COVID kind of taught us, is that we should have been doing this all along. We should understand how many people are in the building, where those people are, in order to run the building more efficiently. A perfect example is, you can take that occupancy data and feed it directly into the BMS system and run each of your zones based on where your people are, directly contributing to reduced energy, reduced carbon footprint. But also when you look at that experience, how does your space planning and your occupancy detection really contribute to the overall employee experience? Well, again, number of people in the building, location of people in the building directly impacts your indoor air quality and your CO2 levels within the building. It directly impacts where you have to condition space. So really, the overall health and safety and comfort of the people in the building is also dependent on the occupancy and the location of those people. So when you pull all this together, it's really critical to be able to track that data, to baseline that data, and to also be able to report against that data. And one of the reasons that's so important is so that you can see how you're improving and you can see what's working and what's not. So really what employees are looking for when they're coming back to work is, first of all, health. They need a healthy environment. They're demanding a healthy environment. They want to make sure that there's good indoor air quality, good air filtration, but they also want to make sure that they're safe, and they want to make sure that they're comfortable. So really, from a facility management standpoint, it's critical to make sure that you're able to provide that type of environment to the workplace as people are starting to come back to work. But then you look at workplace engagement and how people actually interact with the workplace. And you take a look at some of the new flexible space, not just the ability for the space to be flexible, but the design and the look and the feel and the experience of that space is completely different than the boxes and the white walls that we were used to before. So really understanding how people want to work, what types of spaces people want, how many conference rooms, large conference rooms, small conference rooms, huddle rooms, green areas, really looking at those metrics and that data to plan for your spaces going forward. Most importantly, from a real estate perspective, is how much space do we need? You know, you hear on the news every day, or you read in LinkedIn every day about people predicting what percentage of the workforce is coming back to work. You know, Elon Musk is requiring 100% of his employees to come back to work. You know, Goldman Sachs has numbers. Everybody's got numbers of 40%, 60%, 80%. And I think the thing that's really important to focus on is it doesn't matter what everyone else is doing. It doesn't matter what everyone else's metrics are. What matters are, what are the metrics for your employees and your workplaces? And so again, technology needs to be able to support your back to work strategy and how you're designing your space and how you're using your space for this new normal. So with that, John, I'm going to turn it over to you for some of your insights on this topic as well.
Thank you, Darlene. Yeah, I think Darlene touched on many of the points that we are all experiencing. I just want to go back a little bit and talk about why I think that the COVID situation has fundamentally changed what is required of the thinking regarding sustainability. So I gathered some data from this very recent IDC report, which really echoes what we're finding in the field, which is that the hybrid workplaces working model is fundamentally changing the scope of sustainability as companies consider it. I think if you push the time back 3 years ago before the pandemic, most of us, when we think about sustainability, is about renewable energy, is about reducing waste, reusing material, designing buildings in a way that reduces energy consumption, which is a great thing. But as Darlene also touched on, right now the fundamental problem is you don't even know how many people are using your space. So if you leave the space there just as is and keep the air conditioning, lighting running without knowing what's changing, you're already wasting way more energy than you can save with any of the renewable means that we talked about before. So I want to walk through this chart a little bit to get us through the past 3 years and looking towards the future. And I think I find this very useful in guiding us, thinking forward. So this data IDC collected is mainly around Europe. I think it's for a good reason. That I think just in general, hope I'm not offending anyone, that Europeans, I think, are more environmentally conscious. So what the report found is that back in 2019, about 50% of the European office workers were working occasionally from homes. I think we all felt this when the pandemic just started. But as time progresses, over 50% of the total office workforce in Europe are fully home-based during intermittent COVID-19 lockdowns. We see that all over the place. Actually, Taiwan is hitting one of the hardest the rising pandemic right now, and I happen to be here, and I've been working from home for a few weeks. So we've been doing shifts. So this is something that we're already familiar with. I think some of you want to keep this going, and some of you will just look forward to go past this and get back to work. But the fact is, this mode of working is going to be staying around. And going to the time now, 30% of European employees work primarily remotely or in a hybrid model. I think this is what we're seeing. And forward in the future, 85% of European companies are investing in office transformation to meet changing requirements. I think this is especially true right now. Many companies are thinking about, as Darlene also touched on, maybe reducing some of the office space if people are not coming back, and maybe fundamentally changing the role of the office. Maybe people are talking about the office is no longer a place for individual productivity, It's more for team building. It's more for maintaining the company culture. You wouldn't be able to do that too well at home. And really going forward, I think the ultimate goal, which I very much agree, is that by 2025, as much as 90% of the new commercial constructions, renovations, will deploy smart facility technology supporting flexible workspaces and sustainably improving occupant experiences and operational performance. And I think Darlene also said that through her talk. I very much agree that this is the trend that we're seeing. We have many clients asking about ways to reduce energy. Also, by detecting occupancy, by knowing in advance how many people are going to show up on a particular day, and maybe be able to guide them to spaces so they wouldn't have to light up all the floors of the building. They wouldn't have to turn on air conditioning in every floor of the building, but they could concentrate the energy consumption in certain floors where the system automatically guide people to. I think these are great changes in technology, in the way buildings are expected, in the way companies are run, that we're going to see from now all the way to in the next few years. And the time frame is not too far away. 2025 is less than 3 years away. And so I think this, I'm again really excited to be here, and I look forward to the audience maybe exchange some ideas on how we're going to embrace this new future where sustainability is going to be different than the way we thought about it before. And Peter, I think we have some exciting poll questions. Maybe I'll pass on to you to bring them up.
We do, yeah, we do. And this is a poll for the audience. I see a lot of activity in the chat here. So please, again, if you can scan the code directly, that's probably the best way to do it. You get immediate access. If you can't do that, then go to menti.com and then type in the code 54140601. And then you'll be able to answer. And while the answers are coming in, just a few questions. Darlene, I think we all understand the role that tech is playing in contributing to a successful, sustainable workplace strategy. But where do you start? How do you sort of tackle this big beast called sustainability, ESG, SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals? How do you start on that journey if you haven't started already?
Well, I think obviously the first step is to really sit down and just define what your sustainability goals are. But as you define those goals, you always say that you can't manage it if you can't measure it. So when you're just defining what your sustainability goals are, you also have to be able to have a baseline of where you are currently against those goals. And so the first step is really sitting down to determine what the goals are, what data you have to be able to baseline those goals, and then how are you going to track and report against your progress going forward. So technology can contribute through all the different stages of that sustainability journey. It can contribute directly to how the building is used, how you condition the building. Every single component of that conversation is supported by technology. And when you look at the role of the facility manager is responsible for making sure that all of the ESG metrics that are tied to the performance of your buildings are met. And so it is a very important position for facility managers to know what the metrics are, to understand what the corporate goals are, and to really understand how they're in a position to impact them. So as John mentioned, when you look at the ability to automate different processes within the building and the way that the building operates, we can't just be dependent on human behavior to turn off lights and to make sure that that you're following your energy management goals. You really do have to look at automation and the use of that technology to make sure that you're able to optimize the energy management, able to optimize the operations of that facility.
Right. Thank you. All right, John, I'll let you comment a little bit through what lens does your company prioritize its sustainability goal? It seems to be having a winner here. It seems to be the ESG lens. ESG. And then on the second spot, we have the corporate social responsibility goals. And then on On the third place, we have business objectives. Anything of this that surprises you or that you can comment on?
Well, I think this agrees pretty much with what we hear, in most places. I would also add that I think the goals can differ, in major ways across different industries and across different sizes of organizations. I think each one of them, public companies and private companies, they have different agenda objectives to achieve. But I think just fundamentally, all of us want to do a little bit good for the earth, while we still have time to do it. And also we wanted, for a lot of large companies, especially public companies, we want to maximize interest for the shareholders in the respect of contributing to building a better globe for us to live in. So yeah, I don't think this is very much surprising. I think it's quite consistent with what I hear out there as well.
There's a question from Mia Ørn. I think Mia is from Sweden, but I don't know. She could probably also be from Norway. But Mia is asking here, I have a question regarding the design of offices. We used Neurodesign when shaping the interior of offices to limit stress triggers and further a better working environment. How do the speakers, that will be you, Darlene and John, look at the role of beautiful design to turn office space into a magnet that attract workers back to the office? Darlene, why don't you go first on answering that one?
Sure. So as I mentioned earlier, I think that the look and feel of the workplace has changed dramatically over the last 5 years or so. I think that the look and feel and design of the office is absolutely critical in getting people to come back to an environment that's enticing and that's warm, and that they want to come back to. However, I would also say that it's also critical to make sure that the building technology supports all of those goals as well. And so I'll give you a perfect example. If you have a beautiful office space, but employees are coming in and it's freezing cold and their fingers are turning blue when they're working on their keyboard, it might look great, but if it doesn't operate well, then you're not going to obviously be able to entice people to come back if you don't have all of the factors of that workplace in line. When COVID hit, I think most companies spent more money on putting stickers on the floor and telling people where to stand and where to sit and where not to stand than they did on putting technology in that would help with indoor air quality, that would help with occupancy detection, that would help with social distancing. And so I think that you really the two have to go hand in hand. You have to look at not only the physical look and feel of the facility, but also the operations of the facility, and how it's operating behind the scenes so that it contributes to people's comfort and safety, as well as all of your sustainability goals.
Yeah, if I may,
John, a short follow-up on this before.
Yeah, if I may add, I think that the primary goal of the office is to let people find a reason to go back to use it in order to reduce the waste. There's definitely no use of having empty floors. That's the biggest waste you could have. So, and I think later on we're going to talk about. Again, it's not just about looking good; it's about having a smooth work experience throughout the environment, so people really find it comfortable being there and be productive, more so than they're at home. I think that's what Excellent. We need to achieve.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thanks both, and thanks Mia for the excellent question, and also thank you for confirming that you are in fact from Sweden. That's always great to know here. So let's move on to the next topic, and the next topic is sustainability, right-sizing the workplace in these hybrid working environments that we are finding ourselves in now, post-COVID. So again, Darlene, I will let you sort of kick it off with sharing some point of view from you and from Planon.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that, right now, again, so many companies are facing how do we right-size our portfolio. We used to design office space for about 150 square feet to 200 square feet per person. And now, with flexible work, workplaces are being designed to as little as 50 to 60 square feet per person. Also, we've seen recent studies coming in with people coming back to work that it used to be 0.8 people per desk, and now we're looking at 1.8 people per desk. So we are designing spaces completely differently based on occupancy trends and based on the prediction of what we see as people coming back to work. However, what we're also seeing is there may be a lower percentage of people that come back to a traditional workplace, but the people that are coming back want more space. And so it does balance out a little bit. So when you're looking at, sustainability in the workplace and how do you support your ESG strategy along the way, again, I'm going to focus on the technology behind the scenes that enables you to really meet those goals. And that's looking at collecting and assessing your data, understanding use of space, using that data to then set a new workplace strategy to meet the needs of the occupants of the building. Because again, I go back to the people. Focus on the people and the rest falls into place. And by collecting and assessing and reporting on that data, it gives you the information you need to start improving. We were talking to a client a couple of weeks ago about occupancy detection and reporting on occupancy. And their response back was, well, why do we have to track occupancy right now when we have less than 10% of our workforce coming back to work? And I said, exactly. This is the perfect time to be able to track your occupancy because now you have a baseline. You have a baseline of 10% that you're trying to improve upon. And so now is absolutely the time to put in those sensors and that space management platform and to take a look at where you are as a baseline so that as you start to make changes to entice people to come back to work, you can improve and monitor and report on the success of those initiatives. Because otherwise you wouldn't have any type of a baseline. You wouldn't be able to report what your changes and what your improvements are. And then going to reporting and disclosing. So obviously, a lot of ESG metrics are being collected in our buildings, and they need to be accurate. They need to be real time, and you need to be able to report. And whether that's for governmental regulations to report on, whether that's just for your own corporate ESG guidelines, whether that's for your shareholders to be able to report on what your ESG metrics are. It's very, very important to be able to collect, monitor, report, disclose. And all of that also helps contribute to that ongoing continuous improvement and continuous optimization of the facility. So the same metrics that you're collecting for your reporting are also the metrics you're going to use to continue to sustain that efficiency and that productive workplace over time. So John, your thoughts?
Great. Well, I would like to add maybe from a slightly different angle, a few things that our clients, we find clients considering when they talk about sustainability. So I think we're having a little bit challenge with the slides. But I think traditionally we started thinking about sustainability from the angle of reducing energy use, as I said, renewable energy and such, trying to minimize our carbon footprint. But more so, increasingly, we're seeing that we also want to take employee work experience, the work environment conditions into account. So a lot of companies have included improving, for example, air quality, temperature, environmental temperature into their sustainability initiatives, trying to build a more healthy workplace. And well, this is no way an advertisement, but I recently passed on the newly built Planon headquarters in NIMEC, and which is a great pleasure. I think Darlene has one of the backdrop is actually, I think, one angle of the office. It's a beautiful office. I think has a zero energy footprint, meaning that it pretty much consumes whatever it generates by itself. But I think going forward, there will be more. There are other angles that companies are going to look at. And one of the things is what Darlene and I both talked about is about enhancing the flexibility of the space. For example, we're now we don't know how many employees are actually coming back to the office. We don't know how many of them are going to come back on a given day. And all of that's going to be dynamic. And how do we drive, thank you for this slide, and how do we drive energy optimization, minimizing our carbon footprint when the environment is dynamic? And more importantly, can we build in resiliency when we design these systems? So in case another accident hits, another bad surprise hits, we can change the environment without impacting our planning too much. So this is something that we see being added as a consideration into the sustainable workplace agenda. And in this area, there's a lot of automation technology. For example, as I said, we have implemented occupancy counting technologies at the entrance of each floor. So employees will know how many people are on these floors, and the elevators will actually provide the information to guide people. To minimize, spaces where there's very few people, but you still need to maintain lighting and air conditioning on. So these information counting technologies, like all live information, help people make the right decisions in order to support a flexible workplace. And what we also, as I talked about earlier, I think I think the holy grail of this workplace going forward is really to attract people to go back and use it. That's the best way to make use of the energy and the material that we put into the building to make it productive. And the goal, the way to do that is not just to make it, well, of course, need to make it look nice, enticing, give people reasons to go back to, but also really streamline the experience when people are there. They shouldn't have to learn about how to work with these technology. The technology should be transparent and should just work automatically, for the employees. I could give one example. We have a client, we could talk about that in a little bit also in detail, but when you have multiple locations, and if you implement a different technology in each one of these locations, and when employees try to navigate their way either on their travels or just because there are multiple choices that they can go to on a given date for work, every time they go into that space, they need to understand what system is installed there, how to operate it, how to book a meeting room in that space, how to book a desk in that space. What ends up happening is that the employees gets frustrated. Either they don't go use the technology too much, or they just don't they don't check into meeting, they don't check into the desk, and the whole cost of introducing the technology becomes wasted. So I think in addition to the traditional angles when we look at how to reduce the carbon footprint and how to make the environment better, we really need to, in addition, look at what technologies can help us build in more more resilience into the workplace, give it more flexibility, and also how to make the employees work easily when they go into a new space and when they travel between places, so they minimize their downtime before they started being productive and their frustration. I think once you have all these four pillars, I call them, working together, then you really have a productive, sustainable, and comfortable workplace for people to be in.
We just and thanks for coming in with questions. Keep them coming. There's a great question. It's not really framed as a question, more as a comment, but let's reframe it as a question from Stephanie Skibilia. System optimization and communication of how you optimized your indoor air quality to your occupants is critically important to get people back into the buildings. Do you agree with that? And can you share some examples of how you can do that? John, if I start with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've seen great examples of this where air quality is displayed prominently throughout buildings, wherever by having screens in various places. For example, we deployed room scheduling panels outside of meeting rooms, and before even people head in, they can have an overview of the air quality of the space, the temperature in the space, and they could see if they want to turn on the air conditioner or have air quality filters working before the meeting starts. And these can all be connected to the backend system and automated. I think this is the best way to really build a energy efficient and sustainable workplace. To have the air conditioning, the HVAC turn on a few minutes before the meeting starts. Both reduces energy waste when no one is using the room, and also maintains the comfort level when people are actually there.
Yeah. and a short follow-up, Darlene, on the indoor air quality question, which is it's a question that is increasingly being asked, and to the concern of more and more organizations out there. I know Dr. Joe Allen from Harvard, he had a full section on that at the IFMA World Workplace Conference in October on the sick building syndrome and how to work with indoor air quality. So this is certainly a great topic.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree 100%. And I do think that when we talk about the collection of data, it isn't just for the use of the facility management team and for the building owners and operators, but more importantly, and most importantly, that data is important to the people that use the building. So when you're looking at occupancy data, to be able to take that data and provide it to the employees so that they know what desks are occupied and what desks are not occupied so that they can select their space. That's a perfect example of taking data and giving it to the occupants so that it makes them more productive and it makes the workplace more efficient. Indoor air quality, exact same conversation, to be able to collect that data and report that data, not just to the internal stakeholders, but most importantly, to the external stakeholders of the employees or the occupants of the building, is critical. And what we've seen in terms of being able to share that data with the occupants, not only does it make them feel more comfortable and more safe in that environment, but it also encourages engagement in your energy management and sustainability goals. So if you can take your daily or your real-time energy usage and display it to the people in the building, they feel that they can now contribute. And whether it's literally turning off your desk light when you walk out of the office for lunch, or not using as much energy and being able to report on that, you get that sense of engagement so that people can help contribute to those energy management goals.
Thanks. Great input. Especially the whole engagement piece, I think, is critically important for everybody. But I think especially for the younger generations getting into the workplace, they have a higher level of concern about this than maybe the older generation. But that's a whole different topic that we can go into at another webinar. Could we see the next poll? We have another poll for you, which is centered around the question: what technologies are your organization prioritizing to support a sustainable workplace? And while people are providing input to this, and this is a ranking, so you have to sort of drop in and do a ranking of these 5 answers that you have here in front of you. I have a question from Hussein Keshta, which is really about the sort of having a full design view in terms of not only using sensors for measuring various things within the workplace, but looking at also the embedded carbon, especially around batteries, because batteries also have a major impact on the environment. And as we're increasingly using sensors, there might also be a environment concern around the battery use. John, you have a lot of experience in this area, so I'll let you answer this first.
Yeah, thank you, Peter. Definitely, I think it's quite key to look at the entire carbon footprint. For example, when we, this is could be slightly remote from the workplace, but when we introduce screens into restaurants, replace the print menu boards, a lot of people can be arguing for the positive impact of reducing printing, including reducing shipping of these paper, which are obviously carbon producing. But on the flip side, you can look at the manufacturing of the screens themselves is a very carbon heavy process. But so I think the same thing should go into consideration when we think about the workplace. When we have these technologies introduced into the workplace, you can't always choose a lower power consuming technology over a more, I would say, a heavier one. So for example, the screens that you hang on the wall, they don't need to have a full gaming grade PC go into them. You could use simple mobile, your mobile phone level computing power. I mean, today they're powerful enough to drive great experiences. So choosing the right technology when you don't want, you don't always want to. Well, one of the things that we also find a lot in the field is that people are using consumer devices to put into the office. These are really designed for mobile use. For example, they always come with a huge battery, so it lasts a whole day. But in the office, when you put it on the wall, you don't need that battery. You could easily put a simple wire, and with the low power consumption, you add very little to the carbon footprint. So I agree with that angle that when you introduce technology, you need to look at the whole picture, and you need to decide what is the right technology. So I think in these opportunities, speaking to experts who have done it, it is the best way to find out what really works.
And Darlene, I don't know if you have a short follow-up on this.
I do know. I absolutely believe that you have to look at your full design view in terms of determining what technologies you're going to use and embed in the facility. A perfect example is, putting plastic battery-powered stick-on sensors in the ceiling when every single light already has a power source coming to that area. Looking at PoE technology so that it's low voltage, and even desks that have the ability to detect occupancy through low voltage or PoE types of technologies. It seems like sometimes we're over designing after the fact and putting sensors everywhere when there's other ways to get that information. And there's other ways to power those sensors. So I do think that you have to really think it out and understand and plan ahead of time. So I absolutely believe that you've got to take a look at that full design view before you're just going in after the fact and sticking in temporary solutions.
Yeah. Yeah, and the whole question about embedded carbon is definitely something that you also need to make sure that is completely part of your sustainable strategy, and not only focusing on the operational optimization. But with this, let's just look at the answers coming out of the poll. The first sort of technology that are supporting a sustainable workplace from our audience here is sensors, that we talked a lot about. Second one is sustainability and energy management tool, and the third one is space reservation and management tool. Darlene, a quick comment on that result?
Yeah, and I think what we're seeing is a very heavy dependence on sensors to detect occupancy and indoor air quality. And again, it's people needing data. It's the beauty of the technology and IoT that we can pretty much get the data that we need anywhere we need it. So I would say that the number one answer here is people want information, people need data, and they're putting sensors in order to do that. I did also see a question come in about privacy concerns around sensors and data. And one thing I want to touch on is we walk around with an occupancy detection device in our pocket at any given time. So if you really want to look at location-based services and occupancy tracking, my first technology I would recommend is look at what you have in the palm of your hand. It's called a smartphone. And the reason it's a smartphone is because it provides a lot of benefits and services to us that I think go unused. So when you're really looking at determining occupancy and location of people in the space, we should start taking advantage of the technologies that we're already using.
Thank you. All right, well, let's quickly, because now, of course, time is ticking, and it's always great when you have a good discussion. You sort of run out of time, so I'm very conscious about keeping time here. So let's move into the next section, and the next section is about the Internet of Things, IoT, on how to manage the agile workplace, and especially lessons learned from global deployments, but both from IAdea and from Planon. So Darlene, once again, I will let you kick this off.
Yeah, and I think that IoT, again, is something that people really haven't embraced the full power of. And IoT, obviously, Internet of Things, is the ability to get data from pretty much any device or location or person that you want to get information from that will help you drive your business goals. So when you look at that, end-to-end value chain of buildings, it's everything from design to build to operate. And looking at the benefits of IoT in that entire ecosystem and the entire life cycle of the building is really critical. One of the biggest benefits of IoT is the ability to collect all that data and create what we call digital twins. So this is kind of a little bit of a techie slide, but the digital twin gives us the ability to run various scenarios in the building, whether it's predicting occupancy, and then also being able to predict energy usage and carbon footprint based on that occupancy. Being able to do scenario planning in terms of how many people are we putting in that space, what does that mean to our energy consumption and our indoor air quality, and using that digital twin and using the data that we get out of the buildings to really help us plan and help us improve and help us optimize that portfolio over time. So I think that IoT is probably the biggest technology benefit to real estate, because, as I said, it gives you the data it needs to really run that portfolio in a much more efficient way.
Great, thanks. And John?
Yeah. I also have a slide on one major customer that we deploy IoT devices for the goal of improving the sustainability of their spaces, increasing flexibility, etc. All the things that we spoke about earlier. So this is a global professional services firm. Obviously, it's a pretty big size, good sized company. With 31 million square feet of office space with 42,000 rooms. So just give you a scope of the extent of deployment they're thinking. And this deployment actually happens more than 50 countries. So actually delivering all these devices, room scheduling panels primarily, to these locations, it is actually a logistical nightmare for us. But this is a value for us to be there as a company. So the company aims to have this system supporting close to 500,000 employees, full-time and part-time. And really the goal is to give employees the flexibility to really work in any space at any time to their choosing. But providing a consistent experience. So one thing that I mentioned earlier, having an employee learn about a new system every time they visit a field office is absolutely not acceptable for this organization. So they wanted to have a centralized software deployment, so everything has to be controlled centrally. And this, I also wanted to talk about some of the, I would say, problems that we find in large deployments is that a lot of companies, they start with more of a, well, it's not entirely bad, but sometimes they do this in an ad hoc approach. So every country will choose their own system. They'll try little things and see what works. And if you don't unify this in the right time, the system becomes too big and integration becomes a huge effort. And when you don't have integration, then you won't have a unified experience across the location. So when you travel to France, you got to learn this new booking system. When you go to Sweden, you got to book with a different way. I also want to mention, this is relevant to the previous poll question that we just did, is that this organization is also looking at using scheduling information to fulfill some of the roles that sensors cannot meet. For example, sensors, I think we all know inherently they come with noise in the data. You don't always have a precise count. But when you have a number of people booking into a Teams meeting, that number is exact. The number of people that show up, the number is exact. So they are used, and also that number comes without you deploying any hardware, any additional technology. So they actually tap into a lot of information sources, room reservation, for example, to understand how the rooms are used, how many people are using the rooms, what time of the day they are using the meetings. And when people also touched on this earlier, before a meeting starts, they trigger air conditioning, air filtration to start, lighting to turn on. And after meeting finishes, the power gets cut off. So you don't have a projector running when no one's in the room. So when, of course, the deployment is not in full scale yet, we already deployed many, many places, but this is an ongoing project. The goal is really in 10 years. So I would say, the project started actually before COVID. Now it's just becoming more relevant. So throughout the 10 years, they're targeting to reduce workplace-related general administrative costs by 56%, which is quite significant for any organization. And this is not just by cutting down the rent in space. This is just increasing utilization, improving work experience, so you don't have empty spaces that no one wants to use. Improving air quality, air conditioning, so people find it more pleasant to use than staying in their own homes. Of course, there are additional reasons people want to be in a space. They're right now talking about using algorithms. So when you go visit an office, the system can tell you, the colleague that you have online meetings with, frequently also happens to be in the office, scheduled to come in on that date. Do you want to arrange for a face-to-face meeting? Smart technologies like that can truly, enhance the work experience and really build that connection between, colleagues that cannot do at home. I think this is the reason why we have a workplace, after all. So I think I think this is an example I wanted to share. Also,
Thanks.
Early, so this is one last thing. So in the early phase of this project, they actually started using consumer grade technology, and they've ran into big problems like that. So as Darlene mentioned, later on they threw away all the battery powered devices, and they brought in PoE, and they really streamlined the process. All right.
Excellent. Thank you so much, John, for sharing that very interesting study and experience with us. Let's move to the final poll question, and the poll question here is: what are your greatest challenges when choosing workplace technologies? And these are sliders, so you have 6 themes, and you can go from not challenging at all to becoming very challenging for your organization at home. And while everybody's answering this question, I want to move to, there was a question from our good friend Rafi Espiritu in California. So you're up early, Rafi. Thanks for that. Could you talk a little bit about sustainability as it relates to working from home, and then those that are working from co-working location? Because that whole co-working location, flex office space, it's not something that we have used a lot or discussed a lot in this. So Darlene, I will let you kick that or answer that question.
Yeah, absolutely. When you're looking at the contribution to kind of the overall sustainability metrics of an organization, one of the things to take into consideration is obviously transportation. So one of the benefits of this work from home is reduction of transportation in terms of the contribution that person is making by getting in a car and driving an hour to get into an office. And the home is already operational and already using a certain amount of energy. So what we've seen is that, with working from home, there is a contribution to your sustainability goals purely by the fact that you're using less office space. But I do think the other trend that we're seeing is that companies are starting to look at kind of diversifying their portfolio. So instead of having one central large location for all of their employees, there's a little bit more of a satellite office type of trend, so that you can provide office space closer to where your people are located. And that also reduces transportation and carbon footprint there. So, but again, that all goes back to needing the data around where your people are located, what offices you have that can best service those people, and how that's going to contribute to less energy usage and less of your total carbon footprint.
All right, excellent. And the results are coming in, but I think we can see a clear trend now that most challenges are found in the justification of the investment, and also about the dependency of external vendors and partners. John, is that surprising to you, or how does that sort of result fit to your view of the world?
Yeah, we hear this a lot as well, that that a lot of technologies don't work as advertised, and also finding reliable vendors and partners who is going to support you throughout the duration of the project is sometimes hard, because these projects can take years, and you want to definitely find the right partner. One of the things that I recommend strongly is that for end users, clients to work with organizations like IFMA. I think this is a big pool of experts who can really give you, real experience, hands-on experiences about what works and what not. I think it helps you greatly in resolving the difficulties that we see here.
Well, thank you so much. Time is up. Unfortunately, it's always, again, time flies when you're having fun and discussing some great topics. Thank you so much, Darlene and John, for all your expert advice and insights, for sharing this with us and taking the time. And thanks to all of our audience for submitting some really, really good questions and keeping the dialogue live and kicking here. All the presentation that you've seen here and also the results will be available to you. You can see that in the chat. There are links to this. Thank you once again, and also thanks to IFMA for hosting this. And very appropriate, the lights goes out here in my semi-intelligent building. So I will wrap this up. Thanks again for joining, and have a great rest of the day.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Peter.